and I have never disputed since I was confronted on Labor Day weekend
Right.
that I took money from my clients.
We've gone through that. And I
Well,
think
but you
we
keep
agree with
asking
that.
me
I'm
about
asking
that.
you if your income.
Finish your answer.
So the point is I have never, since being confronted that day, my brother and my partner came to talk to me, that I have stolen money that did not belong to me, that I misled people to do it, people that I cared about, still care about, a lot of them that I love and still love. And I misled them to do it, and I was wrong. I have never disputed that from day one.
We've been through that. All I'm trying to establish right now with you, Mr. Murdoch, is as we move towards June of 2021, what your financial condition was like, okay? I agree, you've testified to that multiple times, all right? So let me ask you this. During this time that your income was what we just went through, and you conceded that your stealing was increasing, were you also borrowing significant amount of money from Palmetto State Bank?
Yes, I'd always borrowed significant amount of money from Palmetto State Bank, or for the last, more than the last decade. So yes, sir, I agree with that.
Yeah, but as we move to June of 2021, did you have $1 million line of credit with the bank that was pretty much maxed out? Yes or no? As we move to June of 21.
So in June of 21,
Sure.
yes.
All right. And did you also have a $600,000 line of credit that was pretty much maxed out around that time?
I did.
All right. And did you also, over the years, repeatedly borrow six figures from your law partners?
Well, I borrowed money from a law partner,
Which one?
Johnny Parker.
Johnny Parker. Okay. And that was a fairly common occurrence over the years. It happened multiple times. Would you agree with that?
I agree that it happened multiple times.
All right. And you would agree also that you would sometimes use some of the stolen money to pay that back?
I won't dispute that. I don't know that that's the case. I know what I saw Mr. Bernie testify to in using that particular accounting method. You know, I see that.
All right.
So I don't dispute that.
All right. And would you agree that you also, when you needed money, occasionally borrow as much as 5 and 6 figures from your father, Mr. Randolph?
I did.
And would you also agree that over the years, particularly as we move to June of 2021, you would use stolen money to pay that back?
I don't dispute that. If that's what the record shows.
All right. And you just mentioned here in the testimony of Carson Burney and the banker and all that, you would agree with me that as we move to June of 2021, at least in liquid funds, you were running out of money.
In liquid funds, is in money on hand or money that I could get?
Money that you could liquid funds. Your loss. Where you?
What you mean by liquid, Mr. Watson?
Money you could readily access. Assets that you could readily access. Debt. You don't agree with that?
I do not agree. And I'll tell you why.
All right.
So are we talking about June?
I'm talking about as we move to June.
Okay, but what time period are you talking
All
about?
right, let's talk about January to June.
Okay, January to June. January to June, you know, I could borrow money from my father.
Mm-hmm.
I could borrow money from Johnny Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I could go to the bank and borrow money. I had substantial equity in the Edisto house, as we've talked about.
Which was in Maggie's name, correct?
Well, it was in Maggie and my name.
All right.
So, you know, that definitely was in both of our names. Moselle was in Maggie's name. There's substantial equity in that could have been borrowed against. So under the terms as you defined liquid assets just now, money that I would have access to, I disagree with
Okay.
on that, for those reasons that I just said.
Can we at least agree that generally the way the compensation structure for legitimate money that you earned in your law firm, the vast majority of your compensation does not come except in one lump sum in December? Can we agree to that?
Right, we get a salary. We would receive a salary. I believe our salary was $125,000.
Right.
And then the income that was earned would be paid in the form of a bonus at the year end.
All right. And then would you agree with me that that is why you stole the Ferris fees in March of 2021? Because you were in desperate need of funds and you could not wait till December to access those funds.
I think there's probably a lot of reasons why I stole those funds, but I certainly would believe or don't dispute that that's one of the reasons.
And would you agree with me that the $792,000 that you stole of those Ferris funds, that you exhausted those within about 2 months?
I don't know the time period, but I know that I exhausted them.
Now, again, I'm trying to get through this quickly because there's a lot more to talk about, obviously. But we went through a number of questions yesterday about the various clients that you stole from, correct? You remember that? The back and forth we had yesterday, do you remember all that?
Sure I do.
Okay. All right, and so I'm going to try to shortchange this, but I think it's important that we at least say the names of the people that were involved. But let's just do this to see if we can.
To the comment, Your Honor, inappropriate.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor. The clients that we're talking about, these are all real people, yes or no?
They're all real people.
All right.
They're
And
all
these
good
clients-
people.
Okay.
They're all people that I care about, that I cared about then. And a lot of them are people that I love,
Okay.
and I did wrong by them.
Yes, you hurt the people that you love, I know. So
Sustained.
these were all people, every single one of them, that you at least had a personal conversation with at some point during the course of your representation.
All of my
about the
clients,
representation.
absolutely. I had multiple conversations with all of my clients.
And these were people, every single one of them, real people that you looked in the eye and convinced them that everything was right.
Your Honor, 403, repetitive, cumulative. We spent 2 hours doing this yesterday.
But simple questions that applies to everybody, and then I'm moving on.
Proceed.
I would have had conversations with all of my clients, and some of the conversations would have been on the telephone. I would have had conversations where I might not be looking them in the eye. I would have had plenty of conversations where I did look them in the eye.
Every single one of them looked them in the eye at least once. Is that fair?
Sure.
Every single one of them, you looked them in the eye and developed their trust in you. Is that true?
Every client that I had, at some point, I looked them in the eye, and I believe that I had the trust of my clients. Whether that came from me looking them in the eye or not, I can't answer that, but I will agree with you that every single client, I looked them in the eye, and I believe that the people that I stole money from for all those years trusted me.
And I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as states 329, I believe it is, and 314. And I'm just going to ask you to peruse those spreadsheets really quickly. And what you have a chance to do that, let me know. I'll have 1 or 2 questions about that.
All right, so I'm sorry. What was your question?
I just asked you to look at them. Have you had a chance to review those documents?
I have.
All right. And would you agree with me that every single name on here are either clients that trusted you that you stole from, or instances in which you stole from your law partners who trusted you as well.
I agree with that.
All right, so we don't need to go through each one of these, correct? You agree?
Mr. Waters, like I've told you, I'll go through whatever you want to go through, but each one of those clients is just what we've already talked about. Good people, fine people, upstanding people. They trusted me. Every single one of them I did, and I do still care about. And many of them I love. Consider them close friends.
Like Barrett Boulware,
Absolutely. It's a perfect example.
and you stole from Barrett Boulware.
I did.
You recall a conversation that you had with Ronnie Crosby in which he told you that Barrett was desperate for money because he needed his wife to stay in a hotel near him while he was undergoing treatment for terminal cancer around the time that you stole from him.
Say, Your Honor.
Objections overruled.
I don't recall that conversation, but, I knew Barrett was sick. Barrett is a unique situation. I mean, Barrett is and was dear to me as a friend. But, I mean, Barrett and I had a long, long history, I guess really, and I lied probably more by omission, lies by omission in stealing that money. But that's a perfect example. You keep asking about me having these conversations and looking people in the eye. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, when I stole that money, he was nowhere around. It was more based on lies by omission. And Barrett and I had such a history, these real estate deals that you're asking me about. Barrett was one of my good friends, and we had been in these real estate deals together. Barrett was just an interesting person. He was a shrimper, was born and raised in Allendale County. And he moved down to the coast. And
Mr. Murdoch,
as shrimping.
Mr. Murdoch, I don't know that we need Barrett's entire life story.
No, but it's important
Let
to
me just
understand
ask
this
you
based on the
this.
question you asked.
I don't think his entire life story is responsible, Your Honor.
And I'm not intending to give his life story. I'm just telling you a little background.
Go
so
ahead,
you'll
tell us
understand
about
this.
your friend that you stole from. That's fine.
So Barrett started getting into real estate, and he was really good at it. And so I started getting involved with him in that. He could go out and find pieces of property that were really cheap, get them and sell them and make money. Well, we got in some of these deals, and we got in as Barrett and it was some other people. Well, when the recession hit, one of the reasons these land deals caused me trouble is because the people that I was in these deals with no longer could pay. Whereas I might have gone in and I was a 20% person. I'm now all of a sudden, either I have to default at the bank and affect credit, affect the ability to borrow, or I have to pay 100%. And so that's what I did. I paid 100%. And so there were years where I was paying, instead of a fifth or a half, I'm paying the whole thing. And it equated to hundreds of thousands, it equated to millions of dollars, which is one of the ways why I ended up with the Moselle property, because I had paid more than $1 million in monies for Barrett. And that was part of the deal and the trade in me purchasing Moselle.
So what you're telling me is you felt like you were entitled to steal from him.
No. You know what? I will tell you this, that, when you're doing the things wrong that I was doing, you have all kind of ways of justifying it. And I'm not saying that makes it right by any means, because it's not. It's wrong. I've said that 100 times. But when I was doing it, and I was as addicted as I was, and the things I was doing, there's all kind of things that you mirror. You lie to yourself. And I guess self-justification for these bad things, I guess is what I was doing. But, Barrett had owed me so much money that when I took his money, I just didn't tell him. So it was a lie by omission.
All right. People on these two exhibits, these were real people that needed this money, is that correct?
I'm sure they did.
But it was more important to you that you stole their money on top of the 40% of legal fees that you were taking.
Repetitive.
I never
I
asked
s-
that question.
I stole their money.
It was more important to you than their needs, is that correct?
Objection.
Objections overruled.
I don't remember sitting down and calculating, okay, is this more important? One of the self-justifications that I talked about, Mr. Waters, is, and this is one of the things, again, I want to make it clear. I don't, as I sit here today, I do not believe that any of this justifications that I'm talking about made any of this okay, because I don't. I've owned up to all this money I stole. I've tried to since I was confronted, and I continue here today. But one of the justifications at the time when I was taking pills and doing the things I was doing was, I may ask a partner, okay, how much is this case worth? And if one of my partners, and I may not even give them all the real facts, okay? So if they said this case is worth $100,000, okay, and I go out and I get them $300,000, that's one of the case is worth $100,000. Okay, and I go out and I get them $300,000. That's one of the stupid little things.
And lying to him.
I remember lying to Tony Satterfield, and I remember looking him in the eye on many occasions.
And lying to him,
Yeah,
lying to his family.
I lied to his family. I don't know if I did it in person, but I phone calls somewhere I lied.
Let's talk a little bit about the pills, if we can.
Okay.
And you've already testified, as have other people, that you were still able to function as a lawyer over the years despite the pills that you were using. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were during this period of time to engage in these relatively complicated thefts that increased over the years that we've just talked about, despite the pill usage. Is that correct?
I was.
Hmm?
I was.
All right. And you were also able to, during this time period, convince your staff that nothing was amiss with all of these exhibits, despite your pill usage.
I mean, most of those didn't require convincing my staff, but just so we're on the same page again, I acknowledge that I certainly allowed them to be misled. I certainly allowed them to do things that I shouldn't have done on my behalf, knowing that they trusted me.
How many pills were you using a day?
Depends on a number of items, most importantly, how strong the pill was.
Okay, well, let's talk about, let's say, start maybe in January of 2021 and move forward. Can you describe to the jury what your daily pill intake was like?
I think at that time, most of what I was purchasing was 30 milligram pills, instant release, oxycodone. That probably mixed in with something which is made of oxycodone. It's just time release. I would have been taking anywhere from 1,500 milligrams maybe to maybe a thousand or maybe 1,000 milligrams or 1,200 milligrams on a day I didn't take as much or didn't have as much, up to, I mean, there are days, many days, a lot of days, most days were more than that, and many days would be, more than 2,000 milligrams a day.
And how many pills is that?
It depends on the strength.
Well, let's say it's the
Of the pill.
30s that you just mentioned.
If I took 30, if I had 30 milligram pills, you figure 100 pills would be 3,000 milligrams.
100?
100.
So you're taking 60 a day or something like that? I mean,
There were days where I took more than that. There were days I took less than that.
and how would you take them during the course of the day? I mean, how many are you taking at one time? How frequent in this time period, let's say January to June?
There's a point in time, and I'm not sure when it was, I think it was well before that, where, and you have to understand this. This is something that I can still remember the first time I ever took an
Mr.
OxyContin.
Murdoch, can I ask you to answer my question, and I'll let you explain all you want. And my question was, how many were you taking a day during this time from January to June? Answer that first, please, and if you want to explain, I'm happy to let you do so.
I'm not positive, and here's why. It's because over the years, like as I was saying, the first OxyContin, one OxyContin literally made me sick. And that was when I was transitioning from hydrocodone to oxycodone. And it made me sick because there's a really, really, really strong one. And so, one OxyContin pill was like 10 hydrocodone pills. So, but anyway, as I took more and more, and over the years, it just, you build up a tolerance to pain pills. And so what might give me this energy, one of the reasons I became so addicted is, some people talk about pain pills and how they make them lethargic and, where they can't do anything and they feel. Opiates gave me energy. I mean, whatever I was doing, it made it more interesting. It made me want to do it longer. To go on a drive, it made driving, it just at the beginning, it made everything better. But I took so much just to it got to a point where I was taking so much just to not backslide or go into withdrawals or have all those symptoms. And so it got to the point where I was taking the amounts that I came to be taking in the time period you're talking about, January to June. So it evolved over time. It wasn't like it just started then, Mr. Waters.
All right, can you just give me one example of a day during that time period?
Sure.
Did you start at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever time you got up and take one and then one every 30 minutes? I mean,
Well, no,
I've given you a chance to explain.
it would totally depend on any number of circumstances. So starting a day, one of the main things that this would depend on was how late the day before I had taken pills and how many I had taken. And did I take them during the night? Did I wake up during the night and take them? So, you know, let's just say that it had been a while since I took any and I slept and I woke up. All right. Then I would immediately, first thing, take pills, because if it's been a while, a lot of times if you slept and hadn't taken pills, you'd wake up and you could tell the beginnings of those. I'm not gonna say they were really withdrawals, but the agitation that you feel when you don't take it, and you could tell it. So you had to take it right away. And so I would start off, first thing I would do would take pills.
And that's how strong the withdrawals are for opiates, correct? That you feel that agitation until you can take another pill.
Yes, I mean, but that, I mean, that's just, agitation's the tip of the iceberg when
Let's
it
talk about that
comes
just a
to
little bit.
withdrawals, opiate withdrawals.
I think you said in your, what's been played for the jury and the telephone conversation with Special Agent Kelly that, and you talked about withdrawals, just how strong they are, how you're willing to do anything to make them stop, correct?
I think what I said is almost anything.
Almost anything. Well, describe that, please.
I mean, you're sick. I mean, you're physically, you know, you are physically sick. It's like having the flu when you ache and your joints hurt. You don't want to get up. I mean, you can't get up. And that's after a while. It starts with what you're talking about, agitation and, you know, fidgety. Everybody talks about how fidgety I was. But it starts with that, and then it goes to, you know, you might be sitting here and just all of a sudden sweat's running down your face, all over your body. I mean, like you ran a marathon. I mean, you literally sweat that much. The next thing that comes on after about, I don't know, 12 hours is, I call it jumpy legs, but I mean, you literally, I mean, there's no way that you could sit right here in this chair. I mean, you couldn't remain sitting. I mean, you would have to get up and move around. And I mean, it's like your legs don't want to work. And that lasts for about anywhere from 18 to 24 hours. During that period, the intestinal issues come in, and I mean, you can't control yourself. You have, I mean, diarrhea, like you have food poisoning. You throw up. I mean, you're physically sick.
How many times did you try to self-detox?
Mr. Waters, dozens, if not hundreds. You know, it's so many, I can't tell you.
And those symptoms you just described are extremely powerful and made it very difficult to do that. Is that correct?
Made it difficult to
try to self-detox.
Oh, it's extremely hard.
You mentioned yesterday that you were paranoid. How long had that been going on?
Well, no, I didn't say that I was paranoid. What I said was, as the addiction evolved, these situations where you would have these paranoid thoughts.
And when did those first start?
I can't tell you when they first started, but.
I mean, how long before June of 2021?
Oh, a long time.
A week, a month, a long time?
No. It was, you know, it was as my addiction got worse. I mean, it was a significant period of time, but, you know,
How often
we,
do
we,
you have these paranoid thoughts?
usually a matter of seconds. I mean, it was something, again, my whole life, you wouldn't see me where I didn't have pills on me. And that's where I kept them. I kept them on me because I was scared to put them somewhere for fear somebody would find them. So I kept them on me. So if you saw me, I had pills on me. I had a pocket full of pills on June the 8th, on June the 8th, when I was sitting in David Owen's patrol car. So I always had them on me, and I might be going to Edisto, and I turn on Hampton Street right out here, and a police car pulls out. Boom, I have paranoid thoughts, you know, but I could always say, you're not doing anything wrong. He's not following you. And I could get past it in a matter of seconds.
Did anybody in your family ever see you having these severe withdrawals?
Absolutely.
And who did?
Mags, Pawpaw, Bus, my dad, Randy, John Marvin. And just to be clear, Randy and John Marvin never saw me having withdrawals before September. They
So
saw
who-
me.
And I thank you for clarifying that. Prior to June 2021, who in your family saw you having these severe withdrawals?
Bus, Pawpaw, Maggie, my dad.
Do you remember calling Paul a little detective?
I don't know that I ever called him a little detective, but I think Maggie did. I may have. I mean, Paul was very intuitive, so I heard
think you said
Miriam.
that during one of your interviews.
I heard Miriam call him a little detective. I know Maggie used to call him that.
Did that have anything to do with the pills?
Well, yeah, it had something to do with it, but I mean, Paul was always that way, but that what led him to be called a little detective, certainly there were times when Paul found pills.
Including just a month before the murders. Is that correct?
No, sir.
You recall 6/5/23 that was entered into evidence, which is a text from Paul to you,
I do.
which he said that Maggie found pills in your bag.
Right.
Tell me about what
But that
happened
was-
after that.
You asked me about Paul finding them, but it was Maggie that found them.
Fair enough. So it was Maggie that found them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But Paul is the one who reached out to you, correct?
On that occasion, yes, sir.
And what was the discussion after that?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was about that I'd had eye surgery I don't know what day it was, but days before that, the day Maggie found them, Maggie drove me to the doctor for me to have my cataract removed, whatever they call that surgery. I can't remember, but I had a cataract taken out, outpatient. You go in for a couple hours and you come out. And it was during COVID. And so Maggie wasn't allowed to come into the doctor's office. And so she sat in the car. And I had left pills in the computer bag and sitting out there bored. Guess she started looking at my computer and found them in the computer bag. So she found those pills.
All right. And so she obviously told Paul, and Paul texted you, correct? About finding those pills
That's correct.
in May of 2021.
That's correct.
And you've heard your sister-in-law, Marion, testify that Maggie called him the little detective about the pills. You heard that testimony in this courtroom?
I did hear that.
All right. So did they start to watch you like a hawk and get on you about your pill usage during the month of May?
No,
They did not.
no, Mr. Waters, this battle that I had with addiction, it had been going on for years, years. And so they had been watching me like a hawk for years before May. May was just one occurrence where I let them down again.
They had been watching you like a hawk for years. Is that correct?
About my pill addiction, yes, sir. That is correct.
This time in May, that wasn't the only time that Paul found pills or Maggie found pills. Is that correct?
Now, there were a number of times where Mags found pills, Paw found pills, Bus found pills. I mean, it was an ongoing, it was just an ongoing battle for me.
And after they found those pills in May, that being Maggie and Paul, were they trying to get you to self-detox?
No, sir, not at that point in time.
They just let it go?
No, they didn't let it go. But at that point in time, Paul and I had already had a discussion based on, I can't remember exactly when it was, but there'd been a previous occasion a good while back where there'd been a previous occasion where either Maggie or Paul had found pills, and Paul had come to me and asked me, and I told him, you know, I was back on the pills. And
When was this occasion?
we had had a long talk. As I said, I don't remember exactly when it was before that. Paul and I had had a long talk. And we'd agreed, I'd agreed, and I detoxed so many times. I'd been to detox. I detoxed at home with Maggie's help. I detoxed at home with doctor's help. Detoxed on my own, tried to, and it just detoxing just didn't work. It just, you could detox, but you couldn't, no, not you, I couldn't stay off of them. And so I promised Paul that as soon as we finished with his criminal case, that I would go to rehab. And and on this particular occasion, Paul knew that his mom worried about me so much with pills that on this particular occasion, I think that Paw convinced Maggie that I got those pills in anticipation of the eye surgery, but that I never took them so that she would not worry that I was once again.
So you're talking about, now you're claiming that about the time in May, that Paul talked to Maggie and convinced her of that? Or are you talking about a different time?
I'm not claiming that, Mr. Waters. That's a fact. This is what happened.
All right, we're hearing that now, correct?
Hearing what now?
What you just said.
Well, you just asked me this. Mr. Waters, if you keep making an issue time you hearing these things, when I got arrested and I went to jail, we began reaching out to you to talk to you about all of these things, to try to tell you everything that I'd done, to give you all these details to help y'all go through these financial things. And up until the time that y'all charged me with murdering my wife and child, you would never give Jim Griffin a response to our invitations to sit down and meet with you.
So you're telling me I never responded to Jim Griffin? Is that what you're saying here today?
I'm telling you,
Are you saying that you ever before yesterday reached out to anyone through yourself or through your attorneys and reached out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and told them the story about the kennels? Are you telling me that?
what I'm telling
Did
you,
answer my
Mr.
question
Waters,
first, please, sir. Answer my question first. Did you ever reach out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and tell that story that you told this jury yesterday about the kennels before yesterday?
did I ever reach out to law enforcement to say, I want to tell you about the kennels? No, sir, I did not.
This is the Fifth Amendment line.
Pardon?
This questioning about him volunteering information on these charges violates his Fifth Amendment rights, and we strongly object. Any more, we have to make a motion.
The objection's overruled.
What I did was, so
Answer my question first, sir.
Your Honor, for the record, he did not bring it. He was talking about financial
Sit
stuff.
down, Mr.
He was-
Griffin.
Yes or no question. Before yesterday, did you ever bring up what you told this jury about that kennels to anybody in the prosecution or anybody in law enforcement?
no, I didn't have the opportunity to, Mr. Waters, because you would not respond to my invitations to reach out and tell you about all the things that I done wrong. And to talk about bringing this to a head, to talk about bringing this to closure. I understand how many people I hurt. I understand how angry my partners are and how hurt they are. And I understand how hurt these people that I stole money from are. I understand how hurt they are. And one of the things that I believe is getting past this may help them get some closure. And so since at least January, I've been trying to sit down with y'all to talk to y'all.
Okay.
And never, ever got a response to the multiple requests.
Multiple requests?
Yes, sir, multiple requests. I would ask about this.
Mr. Murdoch.
every
Let's
few
ask
weeks.
this, sir.
Sir?
Did Mark Paul ever hear your story to the jury about the kennels until yesterday? Your buddy and law partner, Mark Ball?
Listen, I haven't spoken to Mark Ball since I went to rehab.
And these were the same law partners that you were listening to the night of. Is that what you testified to this jury earlier? You testified to that earlier, did you not?
I don't understand your question.
Didn't you testify earlier that you were listening to your law partners on the night of the incident?
Was I listening to them?
Yeah, you testified to that. It's a simple question, sir.
I'm sure I was. When are you talking about?
On June 8th in the early morning hours, you testified to this jury that you were listening to them, but you never told them the kennel story either. And they heard it for the first time yesterday as well. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's the first time they heard it.
First time that Ronnie Crosby ever heard that would have been yesterday?
If he was listening, that would have been the first time he heard it.
First time Johnny Parker ever heard that was yesterday?
Yes.
First time Danny Henderson, who was representing you in the boat case, ever heard that was yesterday?
Yes, yesterday is the first time that I have said that openly. But that's not what you were asking me, Mr. Waters, but you go ahead,
First time your brother Randy heard that was yesterday.
if he was listening. And Mr. Waters, just to be clear, I was begging for a meeting with y'all to try to bring this to a close, to talk to y'all about everything up until the time that y'all charged me with hurting Maggie and Paul. Now, after that point in time, I stopped, obviously.
You're claiming that you were begging for a meeting and but you admit information was never conveyed that you wanted to change your story after multiple interviews with law enforcement about what happened that night, including the most important fact of all, which is when the last time you supposedly saw your wife and son alive was.
I don't know exactly what was conveyed or not because I wasn't part of it. All I know
Fair
is
enough.
what
You don't
I
know
was
what-
trying to do was to sit down. I understood to bring all this to a close that y'all would want me to sit down and go through all of these financial things, all of these things that I'd done wrong. And to try to bring that to a close, I was repeatedly trying to sit down with y'all.
The reality is, Mr. Murdoch, is the reason why no one's ever heard that before is because you had to sit in this courtroom and hear your family and your friends, one after the other, come in and testify that you were on that kennel video. So you, like you've done so many times over the course of your life, had to back up and make a new story that kind of fit with the facts that can't be denied. Isn't that true, sir?
No, sir, that's not true.
You've done that over and over again over the years with all of this that we've been talking about, haven't you?
I've done what over and over again?
The second that you're confronted with facts that you can't deny, you immediately come up with a new lie. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Waters, as we've established, I have lied many times, but I can't sit here and tell you that, what are you talking about, facts that I can't deny? That I would disagree with that proposition that you're putting out, that was what I did all the time. But in doing that, I admit again that I've lied to people that trusted me.
So we can agree that the prosecution and law enforcement and so many of your friends and family heard for the first time your story about the kennels yesterday after all these weeks of testimony. Can we agree on that?
That law enforcement, my partners, and my friends heard me say that for the first time. Yes, I agree with that.
Would you agree with me that your own lawyer was repeating your story that you were at home napping as late as November of 22 on national television?
I don't know.
You don't know that?
No, in jail, we don't get newspapers, and the TV we have is limited. So
your own lawyers, at least as late as November 22, didn't know this story that you've told to this jury after 5 weeks of your family and friends coming in and saying, yeah, that's him on that video.
I don't know.
Objection, Your Honor, violates attorney-client privilege communication. Totally improper. Totally improper.
Yes, sir. In response.
He has brought up his communications with counsel, and now that is fair game, Your Honor. His communications through counsel with, or alleged communications with the prosecution.
He didn't.
There's no attorney-client privilege to national television interviews. The objection is overruled.
Are you waiting for me to answer, Mr. Waters, or did I answer?
I think the point's made.
All right, sir.
You said you were unaware of that national television interview. Is that what you said? You were
Unaware of what national television
The
interview?
one where your lawyer repeated that story as late as November of 2022. Your story that you were actually home asleep at the house.
The
during
only,
8 o'clock
the
hour.
only national TV ad that I'm aware of is, not ad, program is one that Mr. Griffin was involved in, was are you referring to like a Dateline something?
I'm talking about HBO.
Okay, HBO. All right, like, so, yeah, I am aware of that. And what I believe the case to be is that I believe that when that was in its works, that Mr. Griffin made those statements sometime substantially before November of 22, as early as around the very beginning of 2021,
Let's talk. All
at least what I understand to be the case.
right, let's talk some more about your testimony from yesterday. And you're telling this jury, even on something as clear as a skin on video, that your story doesn't change when you have to make them fit the facts that no longer can be denied. Is that what you're telling this jury?
I don't understand that question. Say that again.
I said, you're telling this jury that you don't change your story to make the fact that you can no longer deny what's going on in this courtroom.
I'm not telling the jury anything about that.
All right, good. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some more about that issue. Let's talk about conference on June the 7th with Jeannie Seconder, which you took was no big deal. Isn't that what you testified? Words to that effect?
I think what I testified to is that, to me, it certainly didn't seem like a confrontation. Jeannie came to me and was almost apologetic. And this is what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that what Jeannie Seconder and my partners have had to go through since September has been hard. I know I could see it. I could see the hurt that I caused them. And I know that they're betrayed, and I know that they're angry, and I know that they're hurt. And I want to make clear to this that while I disagree with what Jeannie said as to it being a confrontation, because I don't believe that it was, I don't think that she was lying. I think that she feels it. I think that, she believes that that's the case after all this time that she's had to deal with this. But on June the 7th, when she came to me, she was almost apologetic. You heard her say that she said that she wouldn't be doing her job if she didn't do this. And it was made clear to me that someone had said this, that I had to make sure that income came through the firm, that I couldn't structure money. In other words, I had the impression that there was concern that maybe, like Mark Ball and Ronnie Crosby said, that maybe I was hiding fees because of the civil boat case. But
Let me see if I
that
can
conversation was so
summarize.
quick, Mr. Waters, that you keep using the term confrontation. I didn't take it as a confrontation.
And you're telling this jury you're not making that issue fit, make your story fit with those facts by saying, it wasn't a big deal, and Jeannie She's hurt, so she's overreacting now.
No, that's
You've
not
got
what
on
I'm
that
saying.
stand and testify.
What I'm saying is exactly what I just testified to, that to me, on that day, that was not a confrontation. It ended almost as quickly as it began, and I didn't think about it again for a period of time until after everything happened.
You testified earlier, you get paranoid if a police officer turns out behind you, but you're not getting paranoid when Jeannie comes in here and says, I need an answer about these fees
No,
because I
because,
believe you took them?
no, things like that wouldn't cause the paranoid thought and the paranoid thinking. It was always related to pills. It was always, okay, that reaction that somebody just gave me.
It was always related to pills.
Do they know something? Did somebody said, it was, I mean, the times that's what, when I had to deal with paranoid thinking, that, you know, if a judge confronted me in the courtroom about a piece of evidence, or if Jeannie asked me about that, those are not things that gave me paranoid thinking.
Okay. And you testified the same thing about the boat hearing on June 10th. Not worried about it. No big deal. Correct?
No, I didn't say that it was no big deal, but I said that my main concern about those motions coming up on June the 10th dealt more with the venue motion than they did with the motion to compel, I believe is what I said.
Are you telling this jury that you didn't testify yesterday, that you weren't concerned about it?
I wasn't overly concerned about it.
Okay.
And I'm sure I had some level of concern because the venue motion was, it was a big issue in the case.
Were you concerned enough about it to bow up on Mark Tinsley at the trial lawyers conference and say, what are you doing, Bo?
No, absolutely, unequivocally, never happened.
If the Ferris fee issue comes to light on June the 7th, you're not going to be able to borrow money from Johnny Parker anymore, are you?
If the Ferris fee, hypothetically speaking, if the Ferris fee came to light on June the 7th, well, here, any point in time, if the Ferris fee came to light, Johnny Parker would not loan me money.
Okay.
If Johnny knew that I had taken fees, I would not have been able to borrow money from Johnny Parker.
You testified earlier about going to the Gamecock baseball game on the weekend prior to Monday, June the 7th, 2021, correct?
Correct.
Hold on for me real quick.
Sir?
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as stage 572 to this trial. You got your readers with you, or your glasses. And first, I just want you to look through that document and then answer the question, do you generally know what that is?
Waters. Someone wants something, so if you'll stand for a moment, everybody stand for a moment. We come to order.
May it please the court. Have you had a chance to review that, Mr. Murdock?
Yes, sir.
All right, and do you recognize what those are generally?
I do.
And what are they?
Text between Maggie and I.
And what day did they?
June the 6th.
June the 6th, 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
At this time, the state would offer states 572 in evidence. No objection.
To admit without objection.
All right. Tell the jury, where were you when these texts were taking place?
I was in the hotel,
And what city were you in?
Columbia, South Carolina.
And where?
I'm not exactly sure where they were when they first started, but they would have been somewhere between the hotel, a restaurant, and the ball field.
All right. But when you send this text on June 6th at 11:41, you say y'all in seat already, correct?
Yes, that's what I did say.
All right. And they say, yeah, Maggie says, yes, we like these seats. Is that correct?
All right, that's correct. I didn't notice that. So at that point in time, they are in the ballpark.
All right. And then you respond, better than last night. They extended checkout to 1. Going to come then. Is that correct?
That's what that text says. Yes, sir.
All right. So you're back at the room. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Later on, you text after she asks you to bring a charger and says, Muggy, you text, I'm dreading it. See you in a little bit. Is that correct?
That's what I said. Yes, sir.
She responds, don't come, but then asks about the charger and says it's hot. Is that correct?
Mr. Waters, yes, I assume you were reading it exactly so. Yes, sir.
All right. She eventually responds, not crowded, but not the place to come if you don't feel well, very hot and muggy. We are inside, sitting at the bar, very nice indoors. Is that correct?
That's what it said. Yes, sir.
And then you respond by accident, they are making me leave, so I'll see y'all in a few. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And who was making you leave where?
It was past checkout time at the hotel.
After you'd gotten an extended checkout, correct?
It appears so.
And the reality is that you were in that hotel suffering from withdrawals when that's going on. Is that correct?
I was beginning to. Yes, sir.
All right. And the reality is that your wife and your son were on you at that time period because they had found pills just a few weeks prior.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Let's talk about June 7th, okay? You got up that morning, or what time do you think you got up and left that day?
After having the benefit of looking at all these records, I don't know what time I got up and looking at the records. Obviously, I've been up for a while, but it appears I left shortly after noon.
Okay. And you went to work?
I did, yes, sir.
And what were you working on at work?
I was working on this Dominion Energy case, was primarily what I was working on, that we had motions coming up later in that week As I said earlier, I believed at the time that it was the biggest case that I'd ever been involved in. And there were motions coming up in that. I was preparing, Danny Henderson, my partner that was helping me with the civil case from the boat wreck, had been on me about getting a financial statement, and I finished doing that so that it could be given to Danny. It's primary, is what I remember doing. Obviously, I talked to Jeannie.
Okay. And what time did you leave?
And I'm sure I did some other routine office things, but I can't tell you what they are.
All right. What time did you leave?
It appears that I left around a little after 6 from the records.
Okay.
I thought
And-
I'd left earlier than that, but I mean, the records seemed to be pretty clear.
All right. And you were, in fact, I think you said in many of your interviews that you were working on the boat case that day as well. Your financial declaration.
Yes, I prepared the financial declaration. I didn't do any work in this civil case. So my work in that is what I did. I prepared the financial statement, which took me a little bit of time to get the details on that. But I mean, that was the work I did in preparation for the motions coming up.
And what time did you get home?
And looking at the records, it looks like I got home a little before 7, 6:45, I think, 6:40 something.
Then you and Paul rode the property?
That's
Did you?
correct.
And you told law enforcement you shot a 22?
That's correct.
You told law enforcement that you never saw any blackout?
That I'd never seen a blackout?
That at that point in time when you and Paul were riding the property?
No, I did not see a blackout.
Did you tell law enforcement that you and Paul were going around looking for hogs?
If I said that,
Go ahead.
and if I told them that, you don't look for hogs in the daytime. All right, the hogs are deep in the swamp in the daytime. So I can tell you that Paul and I were not riding around looking for hogs. But what we were doing is we were going from food plot to food plot, and we were looking for hog signs. All right, what a hog will do is come out and root, and they tear up food plots. They tear up everything. And so that was one of the things we were doing. But we were not hog hunting. We were not looking for hogs. We did not have the 300 blackout with us.
Paul didn't have the gun that blackout that he favored with him while y'all rode the property.
The gun that's in here,
Any rifle.
there was no 300 blackout with me.
All y'all had was a 22.
And that was a 22 pistol, but we didn't have that with us at that time riding the property.
Right. And you testified, you've seen the Snapchat video of you on the tree, is that right?
I have seen that.
And you don't dispute the time of that video, do you?
I don't even know what time that was taken, but whatever the gentleman
that.
came and testified to, I don't dispute that.
All right. And what time, well, let me ask you this. When did you go back to the house? Were you with Paul or were you by yourself?
I was by myself when I went back to the house. I went back to the house basically when Maggie got there.
When Maggie got there. All right. And where had Paul gone prior to that? Was he back at the house already or he came after you?
Paul was at the shop when I went back to the house.
All right. So you beat him to the house is what you're saying. Is that right?
I beat him to the house?
Yeah. You were at the house prior to him getting there.
Yes.
All right. And you say Maggie was there at the same time or there before you or there after you?
That's what I'm not absolutely certain about. I believe that Maggie came through the kennel entrance, and going back and looking at these records and these times, I believe she came through the kennel entrance while Paul and I were at the shop. But either way, I got to the house very shortly after Maggie got there.
Okay.
And I believe that she came through, and I believe that I went right behind her.
And when did you take the shower that you've been talking about? This journey?
I believe when I first went in the house. I mean, I would have talked to Maggie for a second, but I'd seen her that morning, so I would.
You left your clothes on the floor?
I'm not sure. It makes sense to me given what Blanca's said, but I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
All right. About what time was that, you think?
And looking at the records, I think that was a little after 8.
And you're saying Maggie was already there at that point?
When I got to the house,
Yeah.
yeah,
And what did you do after that?
I came back out, sat out on the couch to eat dinner.
All right. About what time was that?
A few minutes later, I mean, it didn't take me long to shower.
And you say Paul was already eating at that point?
He was.
You say he left first.
What I said is he got up and he finished eating, and he left our immediate vicinity. Now, I don't believe he left at that point, given what I've looked at time records and all. I believe that he was around the house for a little bit longer,
And just to be clear, again,
but I didn't see him.
all of this detail was people were hearing for the first time yesterday, like we talked about before, correct?
Say that again.
All of this detail that we're going through right now is not anything that you related before. We're all hearing this for the first time yesterday.
Objection, Your Honor. Fifth Amendment privilege.
Objections overruled.
So yes, I did not tell law enforcement. Actually, I don't think law enforcement asked me what I did when we first went to the house, but I clearly lied to law enforcement about what I said yesterday.
Okay. And all of this, the last time you supposedly saw your wife and child, all of this detail, you as a lawyer and a prosecutor didn't think that was important to offer on your own?
Well, I think it's important.
You told this jury how cooperative you've been and how much information you wanted to provide, but you left out the most important parts, didn't you?
I left out that, I sure did.
You don't consider that one of the most important parts?
I think it's important.
All right, tell me about what happens next. Tell me about how Maggie and Paul down at the kennels.
I'm still not absolutely certain exactly how they ended up at the kennel, but in looking at the time frames and looking at the GPS points, I think I pretty well know, because I wasn't sure if Maggie had walked to the kennels or ridden to the kennels, and I wasn't exactly sure how Pawpaw got there, but I'm all but certain that Maggie and Paul went to the kennel together.
All right. And what was the discussion? You said that they were going down there, but you didn't want to go. Is that right?
Maggie, what I said is Maggie asked me to go to the kennels with her, and I wasn't going to go. I said, I'm not going to go.
And how long after she left did you supposedly go down there?
It was very quickly.
And what did you tell this jury and all these new facts as to the reason you changed your mind? Why'd you change your mind?
I just had a shower. When you go to the kennel, you always end up at the shop, dogs are running around, you're always going to end up doing more work. All right? It's hot. I'd already had a shower. I didn't want to go to the kennel
I understand that. So why'd you change your mind?
because Maggie wanted me to.
So you thought about it for a few minutes and then decided to go down there?
I don't think I sat and contemplated, am I gonna go, am I gonna go? I think that, like many things Maggie wanted me to do, if I didn't do it at first, I ended up doing it.
And you took the golf cart down to the kennels?
That's correct.
How long did that take to drive from the house down to the kennels in a golf cart?
You know, in looking at the records from OnStar and all of that, it seems to take about a minute in the,
In a golf cart?
nope, in the Suburban. So I would think it's probably, in looking at those speeds of what, 20, 24 miles an hour, I would think it takes double that. I think it takes a couple minutes.
All right, so you'll concede at least a couple minutes to drive down there.
I
Is that
think,
right?
yes,
In a golf cart?
that's correct.
When the kennel video was going on, had you arrived before that?
I believe that I had.
Okay. How long do you think you had been there before that was going on?
Not long, because I got there, in looking at the kennel video, you can see Pawpaw standing in the kennel. When I got there, Pawpaw wasn't standing in the kennel.
He wasn't in the kennel anymore?
Well, he wasn't in the kennel like he is in the video.
Right.
He's probably, and I don't know exactly, but I know he wasn't in the kennel. He was like in the driveway. He was fooling with Cash. He was in the driveway, but like close to the kennel, but not in the kennel like he is in the video.
So the video happened after that, according to you?
Video happened after I got
After
there.
you first saw Paul? You're saying he wasn't in the kennel. When did the video happen?
I believe that to be the case.
Okay. After you had arrived, is that correct?
Yes,
And,
very shortly after I arrived, but after I arrived.
all right. And did you tell Maggie at that time that you were going to go to Alameda?
I did not.
Did y'all discuss it at all, according to you, to these new facts you're testifying to?
I don't believe so.
Did you have any conversation with her?
Oh, yeah.
Had you had a conversation, did you have a conversation with Paul about the dogs, about Cash's tail prior to going down there?
Prior to going down there? Did I have a conversation with Paul about
Yes. Did you talk
Cash?
to him about Cash and some problem with his tail prior to going down there? Did you have any knowledge of that prior to going down?
I'm not sure. As I sit here today, I don't recall that, but I don't think so.
When you first arrived in the golf cart, where did you pull up to?
I pulled up right where Maggie was.
Which is where?
She was standing in a spot where she could see in between the chicken coop and the storage room of the kennels, where the dogs were back up in those planted pines behind the kennels to the left of the chicken coop.
And what'd you do after that?
I went back to the house.
No, I mean, did you pulled up, you get out of the golf cart,
When I pulled up, I stayed on the golf cart,
stayed on the golf cart? How long did you stay on the golf cart?
however long I was down there.
The entire time?
No, I got off to take the chicken from Bubba.
All right, so how long were you down there before you took the chicken off the boat?
Very short time.
Like what?
Couple minutes,
And what were you doing during the couple minutes before you got over there to deal with Bubba?
talking to Max.
All right. And what did y'all talk about?
I don't know.
You don't remember?
No, sir. I do know that Maggie was very concerned about Pawpaw, and
You remember a lot of detail about all these new facts, but you don't remember what you talked about?
I don't remember the exact details of what we talked about. I believe that at that time, we may have talked about Paw. But I'm not certain.
Were you withdrawing at this time?
At this time, no, sir.
You weren't withdrawing at all.
No. I mean, I would only withdraw when I didn't have bills.
And you're saying you had pills?
Yes.
Down there for a couple minutes, I think you've said now, before you get off the golf cart?
About, yes, sir.
All right. And where do you go at that point?
I take the chicken from Bubba.
All right. So you get up.
Well, I mean, Bubba's come out there with this chicken. I mean, he's showing us, hey, I caught this chicken. And I take the chicken from Bubba.
Bubba came up to the golf cart.
He came up by the golf cart. He came up to Maggie and I, which I was on the golf cart. She's by the golf cart. I mean, he's not coming to the golf cart, but he's coming to us.
Is this during the kennel video or is this after the kennel video?
Well, no, you hear Maggie say he's got a chicken.
Okay.
That's what she's talking about is Bubba caught a chicken.
All right. All right. So is the kennel video still going on before you go get the chicken? I mean, you've heard it, correct? You've heard it in this courtroom.
I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly, but in close timing to Bubba coming out of those woods with the chicken, I got up and took the chicken from him.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Were the dogs barking and carrying on or going out into the woods or acting like they sensed somebody was around that they didn't know?
Were the dogs acting like there was somebody around that they didn't know?
Yeah, like dogs do.
No.
No, they weren't.
There was nobody
There was no
around that the dogs didn't know.
Okay. Dogs didn't, to your indication, sense anything out of the ordinary. They were just chasing after the guinea.
There was nobody else around
All right, good.
for them to sense.
You've heard the kennel video. Would you agree with me that it lasts for about 50 seconds?
I agree with that.
So it would have ended around 8:45 and 45 seconds. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Did you have the chicken out of Bubba's mouth at the end of the kennel video, or did it take longer than that?
You know, I can't remember exactly when in the video he came up with the chicken, but I would have had the chicken out of his mouth in 10, 15 seconds of Maggie saying he's got a chicken.
All right. And so then what did you do?
I put the chicken up.
All right. How long did that take? Did you get out of the golf cart to do that?
I did.
All right. And you had to go walk to where it was?
Well, yeah, I mean, a few feet, but I did that, yes.
All right. So how long did that take? I mean,
Seconds.
we're at 8:46 now. How long did that take?
Seconds.
Just seconds? All right. And what did you do after that?
Got back on the golf cart.
And what'd you do after that?
I left.
You left.
Now,
Just
did I
jumped
leave?
on the golf cart and left.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. Did I get on the golf cart and leave that second? Probably not. But did I get on the golf cart and leave very quickly after that? I did.
Okay. Yeah. I think you testified yesterday. I got out of there.
I did.
Out of there so quick, Murdoch.
Because it was chaotic, it was hot, and I was getting ready to do exactly what I didn't want to do.
You're getting ready to do what you didn't want to do.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to sweat. I was getting ready to work. I went back to the air conditioner.
So did you say goodbye, according to your new story?
Did I say goodbye?
Yeah. Did you talk to them at all, or did you just get the chicken, put it on there, jump on there, and
Oh,
just take
no.
off?
I wouldn't have just gone off. I mean, I would have said, I'm leaving.
Okay.
Did I say goodbye or bye?
And again, go ahead.
I mean, there would have been some, there would have been some exchange. I'm not staying here.
Well, what was that exchange? I mean, you've had such a photographic memory about these news stories. What happened here?
It's not, I can't tell you the exact words.
You don't remember your conversation after you put that chicken up? Did y'all talk about the chicken?
No, I don't think we did.
Did you talk with Paul?
After the chicken?
Yeah.
No, I know I didn't do that.
Did you tell Maggie I'm going to go check on him?
At that point, no, I don't
Did you
think
tell
I did.
Maggie, it's hot out here, think I'll go back?
I certainly would have said something to that effect.
All right. So, unlike anything else with the news story, you just can't recall what that would have been.
Well, you know, I mean, you're making that characterization. I think there's other things about that I can't remember. If the question is, can I remember exactly what words I used when I gave Maggie some salutation when I'm leaving? I can't tell you what those were.
All right.
But it would have been something to the effect of, I'm leaving.
Okay, but you would concede that there was at least some conversation, that you wouldn't have just put the chicken on there and ran back to the golf cart and taken off. Correct?
Without talking to Maggie, I would have never done that.
All right. All right, so let's, you want to say a minute? Does that sound about right?
A minute for what?
To have just whatever interaction it took for you to then, according to your news story, drive back to.
No, sir. It wouldn't have taken me a minute. It would
Not
have
a minute.
been, it would have been, I'm leaving. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, so 30 seconds?
I don't think it would have taken 30 seconds, but I mean, I'm fine with you using whatever time you want to apply, but I don't
I'm
think it
just
would have
asking
taken that
about
long.
real life here and how people interact with one another, Mr. Murdoch. I mean, so what you're telling this jury, I call you're fuzzy on these kind of details, is that you jetted down there, you dealt with the chicken and jetted right back.
No, no, sir. No, sir. I didn't jet down there and I didn't jet back. I got up after Maggie asked me to leave, after Maggie asked me to go with her, and I didn't. I got up. I went and got on a golf cart. I drove down there. I did what I did. I said, I'm leaving or something to those words, and I went back.
All right. Well, if it's about 8:46, if the kennel video ends at 8:45 and 45 seconds, and it's about 8:46, we at least can see that maybe it was about a minute before you got on that golf cart and headed back. Just reasonable real life.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was that long, but maybe, sure.
All right. So,
But I don't think it was that long. I mean,
all right, well, how long do you
exactly
think it
what I
was,
thought
Mr.
was going to be
Murdoch?
going on at that kennel, why I didn't want to go there to begin with, is exactly what was going on.
Yeah, well, I get that.
And I left.
Are these also convenient facts in your new story that have to fit with the timeline now that that evidence has been thrown in your face?
No, sir.
Does that sound like real life to you, that you jet down there and jet back, Mr. Murdoch?
Mr. Waters, as I just told you, I didn't get on my golf cart and jet down there. I didn't jet back.
The
Those are
reason
your-
why you have to be
Hang
so
on now,
fuzzy
Mr.
about
Waters.
these
Just a second.
details.
Mr. Waters, hang on.
Just answer before another question is presented.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Just a
answering your
moment.
question.
Just a moment. Are you responding to the last question?
Yes, sir. I'm responding to your question and you're using words that I'm not using. And that's your
Do you agree
categorization.
I'm entitled to ask my questions to you, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm gonna answer them.
All right.
All I'm saying is, I'm taking issue with the manner in which you're changing what I'm saying.
So you
And
disagree this is a new story? You disagree with that characterization?
yes, this is the first time that this is being told openly.
And you disagree to my characterization that you've got a photographic memory about the details that have to fit now that you know these facts, but you're fuzzy on the other stuff that complicates that. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. I think that I think that I have a good memory about a lot of things on this.
How about this? We got the kennel video ending at 8:45. So just to take care of the chicken, put it up. I was going to say 8:47, but somewhere around there. I think you said somewhere around there. Is that fair? Just to do whatever you need to do and get on that cart before you head back
The kennel video ended at 8:45,
in 45 seconds.
8:46. It certainly could have been 8:47 before I left out of there.
Okay.
I think it was sooner than that, but it could have been.
All right. That's 60 seconds. 75 seconds, correct? After it ends.
If it ends at 8:45 and 45 seconds is a minute and 15 seconds.
You characterized yesterday as I got out of there, right?
That is exactly what I did.
So if we're at 8:47, I think you said, giving you the benefit of the doubt, it's 2 minutes to get up back to the house, correct?
Approximately.
All right. And when you got back to the house, where'd you park the golf cart?
Same place I'd gotten it from, right where Mark Ball testified that it was.
All right. And what door did you go in?
I would have gone in the front door.
And if you left around 8:47, and it took about 2 minutes to get up to the house, what time would that make it, Mr. Murdoch?
If I left at 8:47, and if it took me 2 minutes, that would make it 8:49.
8:49. And you testified you went inside and the TV's on, right?
I did go inside, and the TV was on.
Okay. And you laid down, is that right?
I did.
All right. Before you said you'd been napping for an hour or so, or napping that entire time, but now you laid down on the couch.
That's correct.
All right. And maybe dozed for a second,
Maybe.
according to your new story. How long did you doze?
If I dozed, extremely short time.
Extremely short time? Because you would agree with me that at 9:02, you're up and moving, according to the data.
I agree that according to that data, my phone's recording steps at whatever time it is, 9:02 something.
How long did it take you, if you were at the house at 8:49, how long before you went and laid on the couch?
I would have gone straight to the couch, probably. I may have gone by the sink, or I may have gotten a spit cup, but it would have been basically straight to the couch.
Straight to the couch.
Yes, sir.
And you're telling this jury that that's what happened, and you were back at the house at 8:49, and you lay down on the couch and dozed for a second, and then you were up with more steps in a shorter time period than you had done all day.
Well, I mean, your number is 8:49. What I'm telling this jury is that I went down there, and when I took that chicken from Bubba, I would have said something to Mags. I got back on that golf cart, and I drove back to my house. After getting back to my house, I went inside, and in short order, I went to the couch. That's what I'm telling this jury.
Did you go anywhere else in the house?
Mr. Waters, I can't tell you specifically about that. I don't think so, but I may have.
Did you have that tan blackout and a 12-gauge shotgun on that golf cart when you drove down there?
No,
You didn't?
no,
Did you see them when you were down there?
no.
No. So we got you back around 8:49 and you're leaving at 9:02, correct? And you didn't see any weapons down there. You just happened to be back there. You didn't hear anything at all. Did you hear anything at all, Mr. Murdoch, during that time period?
No, I did not.
You didn't? Didn't you tell law enforcement that you thought you heard them pull up? Didn't you tell law enforcement that?
I did think they had pulled up.
All right. So that was that. You did think that?
Yes.
All right. So now you're saying there was a car pulling up?
No,
You didn't testify to that yesterday, did you, in your new version of events that
no, I don't,
truck?
Mr. Waters, I don't believe there was a car pulling up.
Okay. But that's what you told law enforcement, didn't you?
No, I told law enforcement that I thought they had pulled up.
All right. But you're saying you couldn't hear blackout shots supposedly, but you could hear that, correct?
I didn't say I couldn't hear blackout shots, but I'm saying that I thought when I got up from taking a nap, if I took a nap, but when I got up from laying down, as I was getting ready to go to my mom's, there was a point in time where I thought Maggie and Paul had come back.
You also told them that you thought you heard a wildcat, and maybe it was a person or something like that as well.
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I said when I went outside that there's a house cat that's gone wild. And he hangs around. He goes from hanging around the shop, goes from hanging around the house, different times. You might, and there'll be times you don't see him. And he had been around the house. And when I went outside, I believe that cat was over there.
Okay. And you made a point of mentioning
I
that
never-
to law enforcement.
I never thought it was a person.
All right. But you made a point of mentioning that to law enforcement, correct?
In the course of discussing it, I did tell them that.
But you never told them all this new story that you've constructed in light of this trial. Is that correct?
I did not tell them that I went to the kennel. I lied about that.
And at the same time, you also looked at this jury and tried to tell them that you had been cooperative in this investigation.
Other than lying to them about going to the kennel, I was cooperative in every aspect of this investigation.
Very cooperative, except for maybe the most important fact of all, that you were at the murder scene with the victims just minutes before they died. Right?
Not tell that I went to the kennel.
We'll take a break at this time for about 15 minutes, talking to the jury. Please go to the jury room. Please not discuss the case. Step down. Please do not discuss your testimony with anyone during the break. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to remove this until they come back. I'm telling you, Creighton Waters is holding Alex's feet to the fire, and he's not enjoying it. I am, but he's not. It's he's getting really uncomfortable, and he keeps, like I said, trying to control the narrative. He'll deflect his answer to get back to what he wants to talk about. I did everybody so bad. Very sad. Very sad. So I finished watching the Netflix documentary last night. I love the way it ended with, I don't want to tell you how it ended if you haven't watched it, but I think the way it ended was perfect. So I won't spoil it for anybody in case you haven't watched it. But I was wondering how they were going to condense all that information into like an hour. They spent the first two episodes on the boat crash, and then tried to get everything else in that is involved with this man, this family, into the last hour of that show. And it was just, it was a little rushed. I thought they could have spent a lot more time on it, but maybe there'll be a follow-up, because there's a new story out there. Everybody's rushing to the bathroom. That's why no one's talking. So I'm going to go to the bathroom as well. I will be right back. I'm back. Good morning, Vivian. Looks mad and very agitated. I think he does. He's not happy. I'm sure he's rethinking some life choices at this point, including his decision to take the stand. I'm sure he thought, he could use his charm on the jury. Yeah. His Southern charm. Remember that show, Southern Charm? I used to watch that about the rich kids in South Carolina. Lisa says when someone tells a lie, they almost always have to tell many more to cover the first lie. So how much of this story, if not all, is, I think the whole thing's a lie. Whole thing. Well, I mean, we know he was down at the kennels. That's not a lie. He had to admit that because they had him dead to rights. He was down at the kennels, no question. Everybody heard him down there. But to say that he was there, he jetted down and jetted back. I love that the prosecution used those words, jet. It comes back, lays on the couch. Now, so the video occurs at 8:44, and then however long it takes him to get the chicken out of Bubba's mouth and put the chicken up where it needs to go. Say goodbye to Maggie. Get back on the golf cart, get back to the house, go in the house, then you sit on the couch and nod off. But you're in your car at 9:07, which is, no, I'm not. I don't know. Could it be true? I guess. I don't know. And you don't mean, I don't know. I just don't know. I think his wife and son said, we're going down to the kennels. You want to come? He said, no. But then he changes his mind right after that. That's what he said. I changed my mind. Well, I think he needed to get his guns, put them in the golf cart after they were already down there, goes down there with his guns, still in the golf cart, sees the dog with chicken in his mouth, gets the chicken out of the dog's mouth, then goes back to the golf cart, gets his gun. Somebody mentioned the other day, I don't know who it was, that he could have fired the weapon from the golf cart, which would explain why it was so low. The shot was so low because this guy's 6'4". If he shot his son from the golf cart, that could explain it. So then he turns around and chases Maggie in the golf cart, which would explain the mud print on the back of her thigh that matches the golf cart. I don't know. I got to let the dogs in. What are you doing? Come on in. I know it's cold out there. Who wants a bone? You want a bone? You want a bone? You want a bone? Here we go. Yep, bone. Yep, bone. Saves the chicken's life before he kills his family. Yeah, he didn't save the chicken's life. He said the chicken died, but probably not as rapidly as the wife and son. But the chicken didn't make it either. No, the chicken died. Oh, God. Lays on the couch for 10 minutes max. Couldn't have been more than that because... 16 and 7 is what, 23 minutes? Between 8:44 and 9:07, 23 minutes. Yeah. Not likely. Because, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, man. But today we have not seen him cry, not once. But I think it's coming. The closer Creighton Waters gets to the actual murder is when he's going to start crying. Oh, my papa, Poor Paw and Mags and Bus. Killing people would be exhausting. I'm sure he needed a few minutes break. He probably was counting his pills. I don't know if you were here earlier, Lisa. He was talking about that he would take upwards of 100 pills a day. 100. Oh my God. And he would function. You can't function on 100 oxycodone. I don't care who you are. No. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. Not buying it. Yeah. Oh my God is right. Yeah. I mean, you get a cup of coffee. You'd have to have like 2-3 cups of coffee to get all those bills down. And just no. And then he carried them on his person at all times. He always carried them with him. So he had a bag of 100 or more pills on him all the time. What? He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. Where were the pills? Well, maybe he didn't have them on in that night. I don't know. The dogs want another bone. They're not getting another bone. Okay, has it been 15 minutes? I didn't even look at the clock when we went out. I don't know how much longer this is going to go on. He can remember how many pills he took after taking them, but no other details. Yep. Nope. That's a lot of pills. My God. 100. Yeah, that's not buying it. Not buying it. Sorry. Not far from 15 minutes. Okay. I didn't know how long it had been. We can go back and stare at the seal. I get it to work. There we go. Nope. There's seal. Not much going on right now. So we'll wait. Oh, the cameraman just bumped the camera. Lisa says, I did miss the first half hour, so I thought I set my alarm, but thinking about it, I was as far as I got. You thought about it. Okay. Well, I had my alarm set. I gave myself plenty of time to go walk the dogs, make the coffee, have breakfast, do whatever I needed to do. I forgot about the time change. Not the time change, but the time difference. So I was like 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. Shh, quiet.
Please be seated.
I remind everyone in the courtroom that there is to be no reaction to the testimony. No jeers, cheers, no reaction at all by anyone in the courtroom. You'll bring the jury.
On the record before the jury comes in.
There will be an opportunity to put something on the record, putting an objection if you don't later.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may proceed.
When you picked up that chicken, was there any blood on it?
I don't believe so.
Did you wash your hands raw?
At that point in time, I don't believe that I did.
When you say you were there, you said Maggie was nearby you. Is that correct?
Right by me.
Was she messing with the hose at all?
At that time, no, she was not.
Did she mess with it the entire time that you were there, according to your new facts today?
While I was there, she did not touch. She was not fooling with a hose at all.
I'm gonna move things along. I'm gonna put up on the screen states 519, which is the condensed timeline. If I could have computer input, please. It's the condensed timeline, Mr. Griffin. Coming out all right. You see that up there, Mr. Murdoch?
Yes.
All right, I'm on page 5. You see that cell tower map there?
That's up on my screen.
Yeah.
I do see that.
Would you agree with me that it reflects no cell tower activity on your phone from 6:52 to 9:04?
I do agree with that.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Murdoch. Did you take your phone with you down to the kennels, according to the new facts that you testified to yesterday and today?
I must not have.
You must not have.
If this is accurate, no, sir.
Is that typical for you?
Sure it is.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me why that's typical.
If and when I'm going, now, it would be unusual if I was going out for any extended period of time, or if I was going, even on the property, if I was going somewhere for an extended period of time, I would usually have my phone. But for me to go knowing that I'm going to the kennel and coming right back, that's not unusual at all. I mean, you've heard the testimony about the service out there. The service is terrible. You have to be in a particular spot.
All right.
And you have to find a spot.
So the answer is you don't know whether or not you took it down there
And I believe that I probably didn't based on this data.
based on this, but unlike your photographic memory about other things, you don't remember whether or not you had your phone on you.
Mr. Waters, I've never claimed to have a photographic memory, but I do not specifically remember if I had my phone that night. I do not dispute it based on this data, and that's not unusual for me.
Just like you don't remember, according to your new story, the last conversation you had with Maggie.
No, I remember having my last conversation with Maggie.
Looking at this screen, you have the map up there. We're on page 6, and it shows you arriving back at Moselle at 6:42. You don't dispute that now, is that correct?
No, that's what this data appears to show.
And looking at the data, moving on to page 7, you have Paul arriving about 7:04. Is that correct? You don't have any reason to dispute that?
Well, that's what it says. He arrives at 4147 Moselle Road, which is the address of the shop. The house is 4157. I believe that Paul actually got there a little bit before that, but I think that's approximately accurate. I
Okay.
think Paul got there a little bit closer to 7 o'clock.
All right. You would agree that that's the earliest data point that reflects his presence in Moselle?
If that's what the records show.
You don't dispute that?
I don't dispute that if that's the earliest data point. But again, I believe he got there a little bit earlier. And I tried to look at these records to see if if that could be refuted. And I believe he got there a little closer to 7 or a little bit before 7.
No, that's a good point. You looked at these records a lot before you had your testimony yesterday and today, didn't you, Mr. Murdoch?
I've looked at these records other than the OnStar records that just came when they were provided to me. Sure, I've looked at them.
Right here, we have some steps on your phone, 29 steps. And then down at the bottom, we have 89 steps. Is that consistent when you and Paul were together on the property?
I mean, sure, we would go to different locations on the property. Sometimes we would get out, sometimes we wouldn't. We'd get out and walk around. We'd look at stuff. We'd do things. For example, you saw me messing with the tree. There'd be other ones. We may get out and look at a feeder. Maybe other ones we get out and look at hog signs where hogs are rooting. So it would be perfectly consistent with what Papa and I were doing that day.
And 8:05 to 8:09.
Would you agree that that's the last steps recorded on your phone before 9:02 when you become a very busy bee?
If that's what these records show, I see I took steps. These records show I took steps between 8:05 and 8:09.
So would you concede then that you're at the house around 8:09?
I would have thought so, yes.
Okay. And you said Paul was already back at that point?
No, I said just the opposite.
When did he get there?
All right. You talking when I left the shop and went to the house when Maggie was there?
Yes, before you ate dinner.
No, as I said earlier, Paul and I were at the shop. Maggie got home. I left Paul at the shop and I went to the house. I think you were saying that I said I met Paul at the house, and that's incorrect.
Paul got when you were at the house, correct?
When I first went to the house, Paul was still at the shop, I believe.
All right. And was Maggie there when you arrived at the house?
Yeah, she was.
And 8:09 are the last steps that you have on this phone before 9:02.
That's what the data shows.
looking now at page 15. Your steps that you say when you got to the house is 8:09 and Paul was still down at the shop. But don't these records reflect that Paul is pinging with GPS data at the house at 8:08?
This record appears to show Paul at the house at 8:08.
All right. So those records don't fit with your new story that you testified yesterday and today. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe even right now, Mr. Waters, that that's right. I'm not saying, what you're doing is you're taking 8:09 and saying that I'm at the house. And I mean, that may or may not be right, but what I'm saying is that when Maggie came through, I left, and I believe that Paul stayed at the shop. Now, did Paul come right behind me? I'm not sure, but when I left him, I believe that when I left to go to the house, I believe that Paul stayed at the shop for a minute.
When you got to the house, did you put your phone down?
I'm sure I did.
Did you put it in the car, in the Suburban?
Did I put it in the Suburban?
When you got back to the house, did you put it in the Suburban? Was the Suburban parked out front?
The Suburban would have been parked wherever I parked it,
Which is where?
I believe on the side.
Okay. And did you put your phone in the Suburban?
At that time?
Mhm.
No, I did not.
Where'd you put it?
I'm not sure where I put it.
You're not sure about that either, huh?
No, I'm not sure. When I went in the house, I'm not sure where I put my phone. I would think that I put it down somewhere, probably by the couch.
Didn't you testify yesterday when you were being asked by your lawyer about that pause at Alameda when you were leaving, and you had a very specific recollection of your phone had fallen down in the crevice and you had to pick it up and get it out? You remember testifying to that?
I do.
But you don't remember what you did with your phone when you got back at this point, huh?
I mean, Mr. Ward, those are two distinct, different things. I'm coming in the house and I put my phone down. I don't have a routine spot that I put it in right on this corner or right there. You know,
Yeah.
I would assume that when I went in the house, I put it somewhere either on the table, you go by, go into the couch. I may have taken it to the bathroom. When I took a shower, it may have taken me a few minutes to go to the shower. So I can't tell you exactly where I put it.
That gospel story is an awful specific recollection when you need it to try to make the new story that this jury's hearing and everyone's hearing yesterday and today with the data, correct? But you're awful fuzzy on far more important things, aren't you, Mr. Murdoch?
Which question? Here, I'll answer the first one first. No,
Answer the first one first and second second.
I don't believe that's convenient, and I disagree with your categorization of the description.
All right, but you remember the console story, but you don't remember where you put your phone, whether or not you took it down to the kennels, whether it was in you put it in the Suburban. Don't remember any of that, but console.
Well, I don't remember Console's story. You know, in that Suburban, and it's not the first time that it happened, but when that phone got down there, you had to go to great efforts to get it out, and you couldn't just reach over there and get it out.
All right, you say when you got to the house that Maggie was already there?
Yes.
We saw your last steps were at 8:09.
Well, that's what you saw when this data recorded my last steps, but as you heard this testimony too, Mr. Waters, you know, that's not a precise, that's not a precise, you heard the testimony, you know what it is.
Well, how did you get back to the house? Remind us.
From the shop?
Yeah.
I went in a white pickup truck.
Went in the white pickup truck. Okay. And when you got into the house, where did you go?
We've already discussed this. I took a shower. Whether I did things for a moment before I went to the shower, I'm sure I talked to Maggie because she'd been gone. And if she came through the kennel, which I believe she did, we only talked briefly. So I would have talked to her, but I would have quickly gone to take a shower.
Okay. Going over to page 16. You would agree with me that the data reflects Maggie start logging steps and her phone disconnecting from the Mercedes around 8:17, correct?
I agree. At 8:17, her phone ends connection to her Mercedes.
And starts logging steps.
I don't see that, but I don't dispute it.
Well, you see the purple line talking about it disconnecting from the Mercedes.
I
and
do
then if you
see,
go
I
down
see,
to-
I see where you're talking about. So yeah, I
Yeah.
see it. 8:17, her phone starts logging steps. I agree with that.
Okay. So would you concede that that appears to be when she arrived?
No, I don't believe that's when she arrived. I believe that, I mean, it was very normal for Maggie, when she's driving to jump out of the car, run inside, go to the bathroom, do things, and either send me or Paul or go back, or Buster, or go back to her car herself and unplug her phone. So, I mean, I agree that's when her phone's unplugged, but I believe that Maggie got to the house a little bit before that. That's the whole reason why Paul and I went to the house.
Okay. But you're saying Paul arrived after Maggie, is that what you're saying? At the house? at
I
this point
believe
in
so,
time?
yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what I recall. And Paul arrived at the house after I arrived at the house, I believe. And if Paul got to the house around about that same time, he wasn't inside with Maggie and I when I went to
8:08?
get to the shower.
So you say if he wasn't inside with Maggie and you? Is that what you said? Mr. Murdoch, is that what you said?
Sir,
You said if Paul got the house prior to that, he wasn't inside with you and Maggie? Is that what you said?
I'm saying he was not inside when I went to get in the shower.
Okay. But again, looking back at this data point, 8:08, we see a little blue dot right there in the middle of the house, don't we?
Yeah, that's what these records show.
Okay.
And it also shows that circle that folks testified to, what the range of what it could
Yeah, absolutely.
be within. So, I mean, it clearly could be.
Look at that circle. Look at what's right in the middle of that circle. Almost like somebody drew a circle around the house, don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. But also in that circle is where you would park a truck if you pulled up.
All right.
So, and I'm not saying that he wasn't in the house at some point in time there, but when I went to get in the shower, he wasn't in the house. And he very easily could have been there and been parked in the yard.
All right. You agree at the bottom of page 16 that about 8:30, Maggie starts tracking steps again on her phone?
Yes, sir. That's what the data shows.
All right. Oops, hit the wrong button. And you would agree with me that about 8:38, Paul's phone shows him back up at the kennels.
Well, yes, sir. I agree that at 8:38, let me see which one. It's hard for me to figure out which one of these rings, but at 8:38, it shows Paul in whichever one of those rings is 56 meters wide. And I have no reason to believe he wasn't at the kennel.
And then 8:44:55, we've already gone through this, but that's the kennel video, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you would agree with me that it lasts about 50 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
And you would agree with me, moving on to page 19, that both Maggie and Paul's phones locked for the final time around 8:49.
That's what the data shows.
After that, you agree that Maggie's phone around 8:53 shows some steps being taken?
That's what the data shows. Yes, sir.
Data doesn't show who's carrying it, but that's what it shows. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you would agree with me that from 9:02 to 9:06, your phone finally comes to life and starts showing a lot of steps.
I do agree with that.
What were you doing?
I was getting ready to go to my mom's house.
Getting ready to go? I thought you took a shower already. You were just laying down on the couch. What all you need to do to get ready to go to your mom's house?
I mean, there wasn't anything to get ready in that aspect, but
Wasn't anything to get
I
ready,
was
it?
getting ready to go. I was preparing to leave.
Doing what?
I don't know if I got up, went to the bathroom. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what I was doing.
That's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing?
That's,
Going to the bathroom?
no, I don't think that I
Did you get on a
went to
treadmill?
the bathroom. No, I didn't get on the treadmill.
Jogging place?
Nope, I didn't jog in
Jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
What were you doing, Mr. Murdoch, for those 4 minutes?
Preparing to leave for my mom's house.
What? What does that mean? I mean, you're in the front room on that couch where you say you laid down. The Suburban is just right outside. What all are you doing?
I don't know if I got up and went to my room, went to the gun room, went back in the,
Doing what? You've been so clear in your new story about everything. What were you doing during these 4 minutes?
I disagree with your assertion about every detail. I don't recall. I know that I was getting up and I was leaving. I was going to check on my mom. But specifically what I was doing, I don't know. I know what I wasn't doing, Mr. Waters, and what I wasn't doing is doing anything, as I believe you've implied, that I was cleaning off or washing off guns, putting guns in a raincoat, and I can promise you that I wasn't doing any of that.
Okay. Also, during this 4 minutes where you've got 283 steps, not only are you moving around a lot, but you're making a ton of phone calls. Because that in that same time period, you see this red line right here, where over that 4 minute period, all those steps were taken. That's also when you're calling, making all these phone calls, isn't it, Mr. Murdoch?
Well, I made the
So were
phone
you running in
calls.
place and making phone calls? Is that what you're?
You're allowed to answer before Mr. Waters steps on him again with another question. Please. Thank you.
All right.
You were making all these phone calls while you were taking all these steps. Would you concede that? Where you don't remember what you were doing?
Well, I was making phone calls and that shown here. At 9:05, I called my dad. You know, I don't know that I was taking steps like you're saying I'm taking steps. I heard the same testimony you heard, Mr. Waters, and, you know, steps can be recorded any number of ways. I don't have a specific recollection of walking around. I don't know if I was hitting my phone like the guy showed or doing whatever that makes steps, but you know.
So you were hitting
what-
your phone like that while you were making all these phone calls?
Hang on, no, sir. What I'm saying, Mr. Waters, I don't know that. I'm just giving you an example. You're saying that I'm running around taking these steps, and while I'm doing that, I'm making telephone calls. What I will agree with is that this data shows that there was 283 steps recorded on my phone. And sometime during that period, I made certain phone calls.
Okay. All right. So not only for whatever it is recording steps, but you're also making a ton of phone calls, including missed calls to Maggie, who is 1,100 feet away, supposedly.
You're using the term a ton of phone calls.
Yeah.
What I agree is that I made the phone calls that are listed on these call data records,
Mhm.
which, you know, are very normal phone calls for me.
Do you know why so many phone calls were missing from the log around this relevant time period when law enforcement downloaded your phone on June 10th?
From my phone?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Did you delete, Mr. Murdoch?
Not intentionally.
Just around the time of June 7th, all these calls are missing, but you had nothing to do with that between June 7th and June 10th.
No, sir, I did not. And I did not delete phone calls from my phone. Mr. Waters, one of the most important things in this whole thing for me has been getting this data that I believe would exist. Phone calls and phone records would be part of that. I've been in enough civil cases and used phone records enough times to know that you delete a phone call from your phone, it doesn't disappear. So I can tell you, this jury, and everybody who's listening, that I did not intentionally delete phone calls from my phone.
Yeah, because you started talking about you're a former prosecutor, correct? And former lawyer doing civil cases. We went through that yesterday. And boy, you're busy bee on that phone and right out of the gate at 9:02, right?
Objections overruled.
Am I a busy bee?
Yeah.
I am using my telephone at, I think I call at 9:05, I start and call my dad, and I agree that I made other phone calls.
And one of the first things you start talking about with law enforcement is these calls that you made to Maggie. Correct? You recall that from your first statement to law enforcement?
One of the first things that I said to law enforcement,
Yeah, that's one of the things you talk about. I'm talking about with your interview with Special Agent Dave Owen.
I don't remember that being the first thing we talked about, but
First things.
if Mr. Owens asked me about it, then
No, you brought
Sure.
it up, didn't you?
I did.
You don't recall?
No, I don't recall.
Would you dispute me if I said you brought it up?
That I brought up, what, brought
Your
up what?
phone, Mr. Murdoch, your phone.
Phone calls to Maggie?
Yes.
That I brought up phone calls to Maggie to David Owens.
I'm asking you, is that one of the things that you talked about in your first interview with Dave Owen? That you pulled out your phone and started looking at it, that you brought that up? Do you recall that?
Well, but that's not what you asked, Mr. Owens. You asked me, was that the first thing that I talked to him about? And that was the discrepancy. I certainly don't dispute that Mr. Owens and I talked about phone calls. But that's not what you said, so just to be clear.
Well, the real reason, Mr. Murdoch, is that you as a lawyer and prosecutor are up at 9:02, finally having your phone in your hand, moving around and making all these phone calls to manufacture an alibi. Is that not true?
That's absolutely incorrect.
So that's just another circumstance and coincidence in this particular case. Right around the time that you lied to law enforcement about maybe one of the most important facts in the case.
Comment before the question.
It is an absolute fact that I am not manufacturing an alibi, as you say.
How do you remember so much detail about everything else, but you don't remember what you were specifically doing to generate 283 steps while you're making all these phone calls in the same 4-minute period?
I remember unequivocally, without any doubt, with as clear a mind as I could have at any time, that I never manufactured any alibi in any way, shape, or form, because I did not and would not hurt my wife and my child.
So why
So
can't
I
you
know
remember
for a
what you
fact
were doing?
that I never, ever, ever created an alibi.
Why don't you remember what you were doing when you were so busy for this 4-minute critical period?
I do
Other
remember
than
what I was doing.
Other than I was getting ready to go.
Well, that's because that's what I was doing.
Okay. Well, let's keep going. You made those calls to Maggie in that 4-minute period. You had just seen them a few minutes ago when you say you went down there and came right back. Why didn't you just take that quick little left 1,100 yards away and stop by? See why they didn't answer the call. You're obviously wanting to get in touch with them. Why didn't you go down to the kennels that were so close by?
There was no reason to. I mean,
Making multiple missed calls to Maggie, and she's so close. And there's a driveway right there. Why do you not just go down there and say, hey, guys, I'm heading over there?
it wasn't important to do that. Me making those phone calls is simply me letting, I believe I called Maggie and I called Paul, but that's simply me just letting them know that I'm leaving for a minute. I'll be back. The fact that they don't answer is not unusual at all. Now, it is odd. It is unusual that they never call me back. But at that moment, the fact that there's a missed call when I know they're on the property, I mean, that doesn't even register at all. That's perfectly normal to try to call somebody who's on the property and not be able to get them. And as far as not going down there, there was no sense of urgency. Maggie was with Paul. You know, she should be as safe as she could be.
Yeah, she should. Did you talk with Maggie about going to Alameda when you were at the kennels?
No, I don't believe I did.
Did you talk with Maggie about going to Alameda during supper?
I know that we had talked about it. I don't believe we talked about it at supper, but we may have. I know that I had talked about that I was going to go over there. And then I decided that I wasn't going to go over there.
So what was your conversation at supper? Tell me specifically, if you could, please.
I
About going to Alameda.
I can't tell you that we specifically talked about it. The only thing that I can tell you we specifically talked about at supper was Paw.
All right. And what was the conversation?
Maggie was just concerned. Paul had been having, for young, Paul had high blood pressure. And he's very resistant to go to the doctor. And this has been going on for a little while, but lately Paul's feet had swollen. And for a 22-year-old to have having swollen feet concerned both of us. And it particularly concerned Maggie. And we talked about that.
Okay. Did y'all talk about Mr. Randolph at all?
I'm sure we did.
Do you remember that group text coming in about whether or not anybody was going to go see Mr. Randolph at the hospital the next day?
Do I remember it coming in?
Yeah.
I don't remember it coming in,
Because
but
you didn't read it till the next day. But
I've seen the data.
why didn't you? Did you ever text the group and say you were going to Alameda at all?
No,
Did you and Maggie ever specifically discuss her going along with you to Alameda?
I don't believe that we did. I know that there was a point in time where I said Maggie might go, but it's highly unusual for Maggie to go and visit just my mom. That whole situation, it just made Maggie sad, and she didn't like to go. So
You
I don't believe that we did, but I do acknowledge that at some point I said she might go for some reason.
You told law enforcement on multiple occasions that, first of all, Maggie was planning to stay at Edisto the night of June 7th, correct?
I did say that.
All right. And you also said that you came to find out that she came home of her own accord, correct? You told that to law enforcement. Is that true?
She did come home of her own accord.
That she decided on her own to come home because she was worried about you.
Isn't that what you said?
I did say that, and I believe that to be the case.
All right. But since despite what you told law enforcement, we've since seen the text that you actually called her and asked her to come home on the night of June 7th.
No, sir, that's not correct.
That's not correct?
No, sir, that's absolutely not correct.
All right. So you heard your sister-in-law, Marion, testify to just that fact of a conversation she had with Maggie, but you're saying that's not true?
I don't believe that's what Marion said.
All right. And your defense put in this exhibit 107, where Maggie texted Blanca and said, Alec wants me to come home.
I've seen that. I agree with that.
Is that it up on the screen? Oh, I've got the wrong input here. I'll just hold it up. You've seen this text?
I have seen that. Mr. Waters, the only dispute I have with what you're saying is you're saying that I called Maggie and wanted her to come home. I always wanted Maggie to come home, and I would have talked to Maggie about coming home before she ever left to Charleston and to Edisto. And I can tell you this, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I realize it now, that Maggie was already undecided. Now, I didn't know this. Maggie was already undecided about staying at Edisto. I can promise you that, because Bubba and Grady were in their kennels, as y'all well know, that night. That day, if Maggie was certain that she was spending the night at Edisto, at a minimum, Bubba would have been with her, and probably both dogs would have been with her. It was very unusual for her to spend the night anywhere without one of us or those dogs. So
you're
that
saying,
tells me that when she left that morning, she was already seriously thinking about coming back.
so you're saying that you never called her and had a conversation that day asking her to come home, specifically on the night of June 7th, 2021.
Maggie and I had a couple of phone conversations that day. What I'm telling you is that before she left, no, I don't believe we had a phone call about that. We may have discussed it during the phone call, but I didn't make a phone call to her to ask her to come home. I had already told her I wanted her to come home. I always wanted her to come home. You heard Marion say that too, that I always wanted Maggie with me.
Maggie thought enough of it to talk about it with Marion, didn't she?
The fact that I wanted her to come home?
Correct.
Well, sure. I mean, that's what Marion said.
So you're denying that you called Maggie and specifically asked her to come home that night?
I didn't make a phone call to Maggie to ask her to come home that night. I asked Maggie to come home long before she ever left. And I probably asked her again each time I talked to her, but I didn't make the phone call specifically for that, as you're saying. And to be clear, I'm certain that if Maggie was certain that she was spending the night, Bubba would have been with her, and probably Grady.
All right. Why did you tell law enforcement, though, that you found out after the fact that Maggie wanted to come home because she was concerned about you? Why'd you phrase it that way if what you're saying to the jury now was accurate? Why would you phrase it that way?
Because I believe that to be the case.
That you found out afterwards, but now you're saying you knew.
No, I'm saying I found out afterwards why she came home, Mr. Waters.
Okay.
And she came home because she was worried about me. So I'm going to be clear about that. I did not learn that until I think the day after she got killed.
But you're saying that you found out that after the fact, but you're telling this jury that you knew the things that you just said about her wanting to come home. And you were unaware of what Marion would say at that point either.
No, I'm saying at that time, I had not thought about Bubba and Grady. Since that time, I've thought about that. I'm certain of that. At the time, I thought Maggie was staying at Edisto. All right. She was going to Edisto to meet the people, to do the work. Maggie loved to stay at Edisto. There's no doubt about that. It would not be unusual at all for her to stay at Edisto. But just like every other time, I had already asked her, please come back, come back. Always wanted her to stay with me. Always. But I did not learn about, and Maggie even texted me, I'll see you in a few hours. But I did not know why she decided to come back until later, is what I'm saying. And I learned it from Blanca. Blanca actually showed me the text that she sent her talking about being worried about me.
You would agree with me that you sent a text to Maggie at 9:08:58 while in motion in the Suburban, as reflected by the data?
I do. Which was because I couldn't reach them by the telephone and I wanted them to know where I was.
Okay.
Which is what we do.
And you got to Alameda around 9:22?
I believe that's correct.
I can go down to it.
No, I don't have any reason to dispute that.
Made some more phone calls along the way?
I did make more phone calls along the way while I was riding.
Called Chris Wilson?
I did call Chris Wilson.
Had a short conversation with him? Is that right?
I did have a conversation for however long the record show,
About 131 seconds. That sound about right?
if that's what the record show, 2 minutes.
Called your brother, John Marvin, for about 106 seconds, including connection time. Does that sound about right?
That does sound about right.
Arrived at 9:22. Does that sound about right?
It does.
And then at 9:24, you call, that's the landline at Alameda, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you went inside, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Talked to
right.
Miss Shelley.
That's right. I called the house phone to get Shelley to let me in.
And when you were asked by law enforcement how long you were at your mother's house, you said 45 minutes to an hour. Isn't that correct?
I think I said a couple of different things, but I think at one time I did say that. But, you know, routinely through these things, I kept saying, you know, when you get this data, you'll see exactly. When you look at my phone, you'll see exactly. When you do, you know, so, you know, me giving the times was always given with the thought that, okay, there's OnStar out there, there's whatever.
But when you had a conversation with Miss Shelley after the fact, you actually asked her to say that you were there longer than 20 minutes.
You know, I heard Shelley's testimony. I believe Shelley to be a good person. I wasn't trying to influence Shelley on any particular length of time because at the beginning of this, I believed that data would show what data would show. And for me to tell her to say something when my own star is going to show something different just doesn't make any sense. So, you know, I can't answer that. What my recollection is that I told Shelley that that law enforcement would be talking to her. We may have discussed how long I was there. At that point in time, if I thought I was there 45 minutes, I may have said I was here 45 minutes, but, you know, I can't tell you.
All right. And that's the same thing that Blanca testified to, that you talked to her about the clothes that you were wearing. It made her uncomfortable, correct?
Ask that question again.
It's similar to your conversation with Blanca that she testified about when you talked to her about the clothes that you were supposedly wearing. And it
What's,
made her feel uncomfortable. Do you remember that testimony, sir?
what's similar to that?
Well, that you're talking to both of these individuals about their testimony in a manner that's inconsistent with what they know.
No, I don't think your assertion is accurate. You have to understand this. On August the 11th, when I went to meet with David Owens, and in that, David Owens asked me about, he showed me that Snapchat and asked me about clothes that I had on. And shortly after that, the next time I was with Blanca, I asked Blanca about those clothes because David Owens had asked me about them and made an issue about it. And so I checked with Blanca to see what I specifically asked Blanca, and it was an issue to me. So I got Blanca and I said, I need you to sit down and talk with me about this. This is important. Do you remember my clothes when you came to Moselle that day? And she remembered exactly what she testified to. She remembered that my pants were there. She wasn't sure if the shirt was there. At that time, I think she actually thought the shirt was there, but she was clear that she wasn't sure about that. But no, she wasn't unsure, but she didn't remember, but assumed that it was. So that was the conversation and why I was asking Blanca.
Well, again, you're very specific about your memories of that conversation. Is that correct, Mr. Murdoch?
You dang right. I'm consistent because a very short time before that, David Owen is asking questions and telling I'm a suspect in the murder of my wife and my child and asking me about my clothes. You dang right it was important.
It was important, right?
And you dang right I remember why I went to her and for what reason.
Because the only thing you're concerned about is yourself. You're not concerned about giving accurate information to law enforcement, correct? What's the reason for that, Mr. Murdoch? Why don't you want to give accurate information to law enforcement? Why do you want to talk to these women who both are employed by you or your family and try to influence what they are going to say?
I did want to give law enforcement accurate information. I told a lie about being down there, and I got myself wed to that. But I wanted to give them as much. I knew that I hadn't done this, and I wanted to give them as much accurate information as I could. But the reason I went to Blanca is specifically because David Owens talking to me on August the 11th.
You can see that you're underway about 9:42, heading back.
I do.
9:42 to 9:43.
I do.
Turned on Moselle about 10:01.
Turned into Moselle at 10:01.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry.
it looks to me like I turned into Moselle at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock on the dot, sorry.
Yes, sir.
At the house at 10:05.
Yes, sir.
And then that's when you went back to the kennels after you came back from Alameda, correct?
I went to the kennels after I went to the house at, I went from Alameda to the house, to the kennels.
And we got to the scene. You got out of the car, according to what you told law enforcement repeatedly, and went and checked the bodies, correct? Before you called 911, is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct.
You're saying you didn't say that to law enforcement?
I don't know what I said to law enforcement, Mr. Waters, but I can tell you this. I pulled up and I saw Mags and Paw Paw. I jumped out of that car. I know that I went back to my car and I called 911 as quickly as I could. That point in time, when I got on the phone, then is when I went to them and did the things that I did. So
But you were
what
very-
you're saying is not accurate.
You're saying that you didn't say very specifically to law enforcement that you went to them prior to calling 911.
When?
After you got out of the car, you told law enforcement repeatedly that you went over and checked the bodies before you called 911.
No, I don't. If I did say that, I don't believe that's accurate. Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
No, sir. That's not accurate. At least that's not what I remember.
That's not what you remember saying, or that's not what you say now happened?
No, that's not what I believe happened.
Okay, but you don't deny that's what you said.
Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
I don't believe that's what I said. Now, I know I checked them, but I don't believe I checked them before I called 911. Because I can pretty well remember vividly. When I checked Paw Paw, I was already on the phone with 911.
Looking at this data, to show the vehicle parking at 10:05 and 55 seconds,
Yes, sir.
and 10:05:57. The Suburban arrives at the kennels. You agree with that?
I'm sorry, say that again, Mr. Waters?
At 10:05:57, it shows the Suburban arriving at the kennels.
Okay. Okay.
The 911 call was at 10:06:14,
Okay.
just about 20 seconds later. You agree with that?
I think that sounds right. Yes, sir. I mean, that makes sense. But that goes back to what I'm saying is I pulled up. I saw them, and I know I jumped out of my car. But I believe that before I checked them, in fact, I'm almost certain, then I went back and I got that's when I went and got my phone and I called 911.
Okay.
And then after I called 911, there was a little while where there wasn't, I don't think there was anything going on. And I believe that is the time period that I went and checked on them.
I don't want to belabor this point, but then what you're saying here today, now that we have this data, that's not exactly how you expressed it to law enforcement in your prior statements. Is that correct?
No, sir, I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that, Mr. Waters. Will you point to what you're talking about?
Sure.
Where's the first?
All right, sir. I didn't. I left the house without watch.
12:57.
All right, Mr. Murdoch, state your full name for me, please.
Richard Alexander Murdoch.
And spell your last name so we get it correct.
Murdaughh.
All right. And you go by Alec?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdoch?
May 20.
And good.
803-942-1227.
And sir, what was your name?
Yeah, Danny Henderson.
All right. There you go. And Laura Rutland is Collin County. I'm misled. I hate to have to do this.
I
but-
understand.
Yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So you don't have any problem
Yeah.
with it.
So, just start at the top, take your time.
Like when I came back here,
Mhm.
I mean, I pulled up and I could see them, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. And my boy over there, I could see it was. and I could see his brain on his. And I ran over to Maggie, and actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. You know, I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I mean, I could see.
Mhm. Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both. I tried to take, I mean, I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
Mhm.
And, you know, I called 911 pretty much right away. And she was very good. I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family members. I did that. And
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't.
The person you didn't name, that was Rogan, the little boy right
Around the corner, is that who you're talking about?
That's correct. But going back to your question, I mean, that's the way I remember it, what I said right there. And I, you know, your question about did I do these things before I called 911? That's not what I said then. And that's not what I remember now.
So you're saying now that you went out, you checked, you came back, got your phone, and that's when you called 911?
I'm not saying that now, Mr. Woods. I am saying that now, but to me, that's what I said then. I mean, I told her, I called 911 right away. There was no time to do the things that I'm talking about doing in the time between getting there and calling 911.
When you talked about calling Rogan, and you said that he lived right around the corner, correct?
That's correct.
But Rogan wasn't staying there at the time. That's the whole reason that Cash was at your kennel, right? You knew that.
Well, Rogan was staying in Beaufort a lot, but he was home a lot too. I didn't know where Rogan was on a daily basis.
About keeping his dog Cash at the kennels when he was staying with his girlfriend and working down in Beaufort?
Yes, he had asked me that. But I mean, that had been some time before. I didn't know. You're making a big deal about this, Mr. Waters, but that particular night, I didn't have a clue where Rogan was staying or not staying. I was trying to find somebody to come out there with me. I'd called Randy, I'd called John, and Rogan was the next best alternative.
Okay.
And Rogan is so close. I mean, Rogan, of all these kids that you've heard, Rogan, Gibson, I mean, Roro is like a Rogan. You prefer when I call him Rogan, is truly like a son to Maggie and I. And he was such a good friend to Buster, and he was such a good friend to Paul. And you've been through everything I have. You'll see that 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to this, I ran out of gas when Bus and Paw weren't home. And Rogan's the person that I called to bring me gas.
Nobody's disputing any that Rogan would have helped you. Let me keep playing
Was
this.
around, Paul, when you walked up?
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there were some body
Mhm.
things, yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence? I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir, not, no, not, no, sir,
How about Maggie?
no, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You just testified that in the wake of this, you didn't know what you said to law enforcement. That was what you just said.
No, I mean, I know a lot of what I said to law enforcement, but there's a lot of things in looking back at this video for one, the 911 call for one. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't remember.
Okay. But right then and there, just not long into this interview, you made a conscious decision to lie right there.
Play that again?
You said, I was at the house.
And what made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You want to hear it again?
No, sir, but I don't
So you
think,
made a conscious decision to lie right there, this early into an interview, sitting in the front seat, correct?
I don't believe so.
You didn't make a conscious decision to lie?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that was lying at that point,
Okay, tell me why not.
because Maggie had gone to the kennels and I was at the house.
Okay. So you think you were being, that was not a lie at that point?
I don't believe so.
At what point did you decide to lie?
I'm not sure, but it was in that,
It was in this interview?
I believe that it was.
Okay, was this interview where you're sitting in the front seat, correct?
It is.
You're not in custody, correct?
I'm not in custody.
They're giving you water, letting you chew tobacco, treating you politely, correct?
They were treating me very politely.
So what was it that clicked? So you said in this interview that it clicked that I'm gonna lie about the most important fact that I know?
I'm not sure exactly when in it that I lied, decided to lie, but I believe it was during this interview. I believe all those things that I talked about, those things that had gone on, the things that people had said to me about don't talk to anybody without a lawyer. Partners all told me that, or a lot of my partners told me that. My dear friend, Chief Alexander, was one that said that. I overheard, I believe it was Sheriff Hill, I'm not positive. I overheard him tell, I believe Mark Ball or Gray Holmes, don't let him talk to anybody without a lawyer. And what I believe is that based on my distrust of SLED and getting in that interview, and I'm not positive about this, but I believe when he asked me, about my relationship with my wife and my son, I believe that's when I decided to lie.
You
But I'm
also
not
left
positive.
out when you had the GSR too, because that's what you testified to yesterday.
That certainly contributed.
And your dope paranoia too. You said that as well, correct?
Well, those things are what triggered the paranoia that started as my addiction evolved.
And so your experienced lawyer and you've been a prosecutor and you took the advice of your law partners that you should have a lawyer there as you read that as, oh, I should lie.
No, that's not an accurate.
Because that's not what
statement.
that means, is it, Mr. Murdock?
Well, that's not an accurate statement, what you just said, Mr. Waters.
I just repeated what you just said. You said it was one of the factors was your law partner and Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander told you that you needed a lawyer before you talked to police, and you took that somehow as meaning I need to lie
No,
as a lawyer and a prosecutor?
no, that's what you said, Mr. Waters, but I,
How am I mischaracterizing it from your perspective, Mr. Murdock?
because,
Because I think isn't that what you heard? Isn't that what you just said? Excuse me.
no, sir, that's not what I said.
All right,
So,
well, say it again.
I believe those guys were trying to help me. I believe they cared about me. I believe they thought that I was in a condition such that I shouldn't talk to anybody. I mean, those guys had to prop me up, help me get myself together just to be able to go talk to David Owens. I mean, they were trying to help me. But before that, that was just one of the many things that I believe led to that situation sitting in there where those paranoid thoughts came to me. Them talking about not talking to anybody without a lawyer, Brian Varnado, checking my hands, the fact that I got a pocket full of pills in my pocket. I was the person who found Maggie and Paul. My distrust for SLED. All of those factors combined and made me decide to lie. I also know him asking me about Maggie and Paw contributed to that paranoia. All I'm saying is, I'm not disputing that I lied. I'm just saying at this point, you're saying I made a conscious decision to lie here, and I'm saying I don't think I made a conscious decision right there.
Okay, so it's later.
I believe so.
Had you already had your GSR done at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had.
And you already talked to your law partners and heard Sheriff Hill. Now you're blaming him and
I'm not-
blaming
no.
Chief Alexander now as well for your lies.
No, sir, Mr. Waters.
You
I'm
just
not-
added that one. You didn't say that yesterday. You just added that one.
Be given an opportunity to answer the question. Objection.
Can you finish your last answer?
All right. Mr. Waters, I'm not blaming anybody. I accept full responsibility for what I did. What I'm saying is what I believe contributed to me doing that and the reason why I did that. I think those folks were trying to help me. So I don't blame them. I think they were worried about me.
I don't dispute that, but you're saying you took that advice as I need to lie.
Nah, what you're doing is you're isolating one
I'm
single
not
thing.
isolating anything. I've mentioned all the factors. You've added some new ones, but I mentioned all the factors that you're blaming for your
No, sir.
decision to lie.
That's not what you did. What you asked me is you said, I took my partners telling me not to talk to somebody without a lawyer as a reason to lie. And that's an inaccurate statement. That was one of the factors that went into a series,
decision to lie.
hang on, Mr. Waters, a series of events, all right, that caused me to have paranoid thinking, all right, and then I lied.
All right. But at some point it happened during this interview that you crossed over. You're saying that you came into this interview intending to be fully disclosing to everything, and something happened in this interview that sent you over the edge, and you said, hey, let me lie about the last time I saw my wife and child alive, supposedly.
I certainly didn't go into that interview, I believe, intending to lie. Mr.
Okay.
Waters, I wasn't capable at that point in time of planning anything or thinking through anything.
So somehow during this interview, all of a sudden those senses came to you to plan and do that.
When I got to thinking in that paranoid way, that normally, as I said, I mean, I could take a deep breath and make it go away. I never had a situation where it lasted more than a matter of seconds. That night, after all those things had happened, it didn't go away in a matter of seconds. And I decided to lie.
Those are the clothes that you ultimately gave to Dave Owen, is that right?
Those are the clothes I gave to David Owens.
At what point did you be able to chuck the pills you say are in your pocket? When did you do that?
When I was in my bedroom.
When you're in the bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you put them?
I'm not sure where I put them, but ultimately they would have gone in my suitcase.
So that's when you did it? You have a specific recollection of that?
No, I don't. I just know that I took them out of my pocket.
If we watch this whole video, you think you could, if we watch the whole thing, you think you can say, okay, that's the moment where my senses came to me and I decided I was going to tell this major lie?
I don't know that it happened like that, but I mean, I may be able to tell you some things that contributed to it. We watched the whole thing.
Heard that. I just want to be clear, though. At least on this one, at some point during this interview, when you were able to plan your lie about this event. And you made that decision.
Obviously,
But it wasn't what we just played. It wasn't yet. It was some point after that.
I don't think that's a lie right there. Is the reason why I don't think that it's occurred before this, because what I'm saying there, I believe to be truthful. And I know this. I know for a fact that when David Owens asked me about my relationship with my wife and my child, I know that that played a role in that. And I believe that, and I may be wrong, but I believe that this was before that.
You ever heard the expression, not telling the whole truth is the same as telling the lie?
Sure I have.
That's something you understood as a lawyer and a prosecutor?
Yes.
All right.
All right, Mr. Murdoch, state your full name for me, please.
Richard Alexander Murdoch.
And spell your last name so I get it correct.
Murdaughh.
All right. And you go by Alec?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdoch?
May 27th, 1968,
And good phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
All right. And sir, what was your name?
Yeah, Danny Henderson.
Okay. All right. As I stated, I'm David Owen in Lower Rutland with Collin County. I'm misled. I hate to have to do this.
I
but
understand.
yeah,
I totally
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
So you don't have any problem
Yeah.
with it.
So,
You hadn't decided to lie right there, correct?
I don't believe so.
You told David Owen that you understood that he had to ask questions and you do what you need to do, correct?
That is what I told him.
This might be a good time for a break.
Clock. Ladies and gentlemen, addressing the jury. We'll break till 2:15. We'll go to the jury room. Please do not discuss the case. Mr. Murdoch, you may step down. You're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone during lunch. And Mr. Griffin, we'll address whatever matter you want to place on the record when we return. Yes. All right, 1 second before everybody moves. So I guess everyone. Yes, sir. Sure.
Not sure what they're waiting for. I will go ahead and make a part 4 and return at 2:15 for hopefully what is the conclusion of this cross-examination. I think he's kind of made his point, the prosecutor, so I don't know how much long he's going to try to hammer it home. The guy's a liar. We know it. Some kind of issue going on. Think it's another bomb threat? Ooh. To be a fly on this wall, I want to know what they're saying.
We'll be in recess to 1:15.
He's not going to tell us. Oh, no. All right, guys. I will see you guys back at 2:15. Part 4. Look for the thumbnail. See you guys soon.